Bueno, Verabeno.
Hi, Amos.
Long time no see.
Long time no see. In the meantime,
Well,
we've had Chagim.
We've seen each other, but
Yeah, we have.
we just haven't recorded.
That's true. We have Chagim.
Yeah,
I had a new baby.
you did.
Technically, my wife had the baby, and I
Yeah,
just helped. Yeah.
50% of your DNA.
There's radish.
Welcome to something that's everything under the sun 2.0.
2.0.
Not really, but kind of. It's a bit different to what we've done before. We have shorter episodes just so that it's easier to consume. And yeah, why don't I get into what this is going to be? So we're going to analyze, businesses and how Jewish values work into businesses, but they're not necessarily just Jewish values, right? They're human values, let's say.
Absolutely, yeah. I've always been fascinated in the business world. I listened to a lot of talks by people like Simon Sinek and other people who really talk about how how places of work and how companies should really conduct their business, but on a business level, but also on an ethical level. And there's many levels to it. And also, ever since I've got my MBA and really learned about the more intricacies about how to run different businesses from all different angles, it's been clear to me, with my rabbinic training, it's been really, really clear to me that companies fail or succeed not only, but it's based on a foundation of what values they have. And the more I've started analyzing different companies and reading articles and even some of the classes that I've had that I'll share on this podcast in the coming episodes, in my class with major Israeli brands, major global brands, really a lot of it boils down to what was the foundation of their decision making. And my theory that I'm hoping to present and really with you share with the world here and to our listeners is that if you have proper Jewish values, and many of them are global universal values as well, we're going to talk about the Jewish angle on it because we're Jewish. We're Jewish. Yeah. So we're going to present the Jewish angle on it, but Judaism does not have a monopoly over values or over ethics or morality. We just have the Torah, we have the guidance. It's a beautiful, wonderful book that we're going to be basing a lot of these values on, which is Rav Noach Weinberg of blessed memory.
It will be linked in the description.
It will be linked in the description. And Aish.com, he was the founder of Aish Torah. He's a very interesting person in his own regard. Just a personal note on him that when he established Aish Torah, which is now a worldwide, like their website has actually recently gone through a rebranding, and they have a reach of 9 million people a year. So it's a very significant website. Aish Torah was actually the 6th organization that he started. So he started 5 organizations that all failed.
Yeah.
To various degrees.
Yeah.
Some of them are still going on. Most of them kind of failed. And everything he learned from those failures, he infused into Aish Torah. Yeah. And so, it's like, that's one of the lessons. One of the lessons is never give up. Never give up. But that's a general value. We're going to be talking about values such as arrogance, humility, integrity in business, joy, fear, happiness. We'll talk about different Jewish halachic topics or topics in Jewish law in terms of how you categorize workers, payments, managing the workspace, and all of these values are not just nice to have; they actually influence the core of decision making in companies, and that decision making will ultimately translate into a difference in the bottom line, in the profit and loss margin, and in the company's value, ultimately. And that's really what we'd like to demonstrate. So values aren't just like, it's nice to have somebody with values. No, it makes a huge, huge difference, and it is the foundation of any decision making.
And so each of the broad topics that we're going to talk about is going to span 3 to 4 episodes roughly, and we encourage you to listen to all of them in order, just to get exactly what we're trying to get at with the values and the companies, and we'll go into case studies and things. And the first topic that we're going to get into is overvaluing a brand, and it gets into one of the topics that we have briefly talked about in our podcast in the past, which is arrogance and humility, and I think it was episode 2.
Oh, yeah, it could be. We
ages
talked
ago.
about that.
It was about a year ago.
We talked about that really, really early on. Yeah,
Yeah.
Arrogance and humility, and this is an overarching. These are 2 overarching values. Meaning, there's values that we're going to be talking about in terms of employees versus contractors down the road, or different definitions that are very much more specific. These are very much overarching values that the reason we wanted to start with this is because we're going to come back to this time and time and time again. Yeah. Because this is going to be the foundation of how people set up their lives, people's how people present themselves, this shapes people's outlook on life, and this definitely shapes people's decision making, or possibly compromises people's decision making, which we would like to demonstrate. So first, we have to define the terms. To define what is arrogance and what is humility. So, Almost, what do you think?
I have the answers in front of me.
Arrogance is, well, we've learned a little bit of Rav Noach Weinberg. Yeah. So what does he say?
He says arrogance, one sentence, is that it's all about the individual for themselves. So that it's a very self-centered premise, I guess, where it's all about me and my success for whichever outward goal is there to achieve. Meaning, if we'll take it back to cricket, if I want to succeed for myself, that's for me to succeed, and I don't care about the result for the team. Whereas humility, you can still care about your own results and your own performance, but you're more generalized. It's your own success for the better of the bigger picture.
Yeah, let me hone it down to a little more specific. Let's take cricket.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a person that's only playing for their own personal statistics and their own paycheck. Yeah. And there's a person who's playing to win the game. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to do things that sacrifice your statistics because it's better for the team to win the game. Yes. Sometimes you have to not to like stay out of play or play a position that may not be the position you'd want to play, but it's better for the team. Yeah. Sometimes you don't want to try to hit a 6 because you might get out. You might as well just hit a 1 and keep it going. Whatever strategy is, right? And it may not be as flashy as hitting a 6 and having the highlights on whatever network, like on Sky, right? TV.
Like the best...
Well, I mean, what's a good example?
One of the best batsmen ever, Sir Donald Bradman. Okay. His average score was 99.94.
That's amazing.
Which is
that's amazing,
unheard of.
Yeah.
And
how do you do it?
He said he hit the ball on the ground for one. Like he never hit.
Nobody caught him.
He's hit 6 sixes in his whole career.
Wow.
So it's unheard of.
Well,
especially nowadays.
That's because he didn't play T20, but that's a different. That's a different thing.
Different thing. That doesn't.
We both understand that. Yeah.
But he said that if I had to get a duck being 0, every time, and it meant that my team wins, I would do it. And this is a guy that's got 4 or 5 300 plus scores. So that's the crux of humility.
Exactly. Humility is about, and that's what Rav Noach Weinberg says. Arrogance is I'm all that counts. Humility is what's greater than me counts. I'll give you an example. If the most humble person in the Torah is Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses. We were talking about this before. I talked about Moshe Rabbeinu. It was a very confident person. I mean, he grew up in the palace.
Yeah.
And he was an incredibly forthright person. He had a speech impediment, but he stood up to Paro, which is either somebody he grew up with or the Paro in his home or whoever it may be, right? But he still stood up to Paro. He stood tall. He took criticism. He in the sin of the golden calf, he commanded to put to judgment all the people who caused the sin of the golden calf. Yeah. So he did not lack self-confidence, which meaning self-confidence is not tied to arrogance. That's a myth.
Yeah.
That's or I should say it's a false perception.
It's a misnomer.
It's a misnomer. Yeah, it's not a myth. It's a false perception people have that if you're confident, that means it's a healthy arrogance. Yeah. What we're saying is no. Arrogance and humility have nothing to do with self-confidence. You can have somebody who's very low confidence but really arrogant because all they care about is themselves. Think about somebody who's a perpetual black hole. Then we'll get back to Moshe. Black hole, I mean somebody who sucks energy out of people, uses people, and then when they no longer need them, dumps them. Someone who's in perpetual therapy but doesn't get anywhere. They're always hashing out. I have no issue with therapy. I think that's important. But if you're talking about the same issues for 20 years, and the issues are never evolving, if you're using a therapist and things evolve and because things always come up, that's great. I think it's great to use a therapist. So never saying anything bad about that. But if you're hashing over the same thing and then the therapist taking money for the same thing. Or if it's not a therapist, if it's your friend, you're like, listen,
sounds like a bit of a waste of money.
Yeah, it is. Well, it is. Yeah. It is. And these people are black holes. Like I know people that I've seen these people, doesn't matter where, who they are, not in our community, in the Jewish community, but outside of it, that they're, they just use people for, they use people for their own personal benefit. Yeah. They get people to solve their problems. You're my friend, and then they dump all their issues on you. Yeah. They have zero self-confidence, but they're incredibly arrogant.
Yeah,
because they're all centered about themselves. Right? This is the point I'm trying to make. Moshe Rabbeinu is the opposite. He had a tremendous amount of self-confidence. You could have also people with self-confidence who are arrogant and people with no self-confidence who are humble, but that's hard to find with true humility. Somebody with true humility has a lot of self-confidence, but their focus is on the value. Focus is on what value I need to bring, what service I need to do, what is the right thing to do, not about me. So Moshe Rabbeinu got to receive the Torah because he was Anav Mikol Adam, the most humble of all people, and and you have to receive. So to be humble, you didn't do anything, you received.
You received, yeah. And we talked about an analogy earlier of a window, and the glass is so clear, or maybe there's no glass, maybe it's just the frame where the light just comes straight through, and that's the analogy of the Torah being passed on to Moshe and Moshe to the people.
That's what the Chachamim use versus the prophets, who are like tinted glass because all the prophets gave their own interpretation, which they were supposed to do, but that's why they didn't transmit the Torah. The Torah had to be transmitted exactly from Hashem, from God, all the way to the parchment and to the Ten Commandments, exactly as he intended, without personal bias. So anyways, that's arrogance versus humility in a nutshell.
So let's get into our third point, which is the value of a brand. So you can speak a lot better than I can about this because you're the MBA guy. So take it away.
So I'm going to just platform off of another definition of arrogance and get into what a brand is. The brand is incredibly important. Yeah. Brand is probably the most important thing for any company. more important than the CEO, more important than the employees they have. Some would argue even more important than the product itself.
Yeah.
Is the brand.
Yeah.
So pride, according to there's a 17th century commentator from Italy, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. He's also a Kabbalist, and he defines arrogance in his book Path of the Just. He says, pride is when someone has high regard for himself and considers himself worthy of praise. Right? It considers himself worthy of praise. Another definition that of the Malbim, who's a 19th century rabbi in Hungary, he says, arrogance is illusory and not based on reality. It is an illusion contained solely within one's head, but objectively untrue. So one who is arrogant is conceited and thinks more of himself than he really is. He is arrogant even without having any virtue over others. This has to do with overvaluing a brand, when the brand gets in somebody's head. But now let's talk about, as you asked me, about a brand on that premise now, the more exact definition of arrogance. Yeah. So a brand is effectively, there's the logo and there's the brand. The brand is what the company is in terms of its reputation. And that's the line on the accounting. When the value of a company, the most important line in a company is its reputation, i.e. its brand. So why is branding important? Brand managers are incredibly important. All brand managers do is they connect people within the company to other people and make sure that the brand is continued to be strong. And the brand should always be greater than the parts themselves, right? The sum is greater than the collective is greater than the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
So for example, if you're buying two cars and you know, and you test drive them and you don't know who made the cars, you may go buy whatever you personally feel.
Any kind of...
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, there's no brand on it. You just see the car, and you drive it. You may ask some questions, check it out. If you know something about cars, you ask more advanced questions about the motor, about the oil, about fuel. Yeah, whatever. Is it how the gear shift, whatever. You know, or you may just care about the Bluetooth speaker. It depends what kind of person you are, right?
Yeah.
So whatever you care about, fine. And you'll drive the car that's better. Now, if you say, listen, one is a Mitsubishi and the other is a Toyota, or one is a Toyota, another is a no-name brand or a low brand, people will buy Toyota. Toyota is, in fact, the 9th most valuable brand in all companies in the world. Yeah. And it's actually it's a greater brand even than Mercedes-Benz. Toyota.
Yeah. Oh, fun fact, Toyota is also not the guy's name.
Right.
It was
really?
Toyota.
Oh.
And he just liked it because it sounded better.
Toyota.
Yeah.
Anyways, so basically people say, my parents, all their after they got rid of their other car. I won't say which brand it is because I don't want to say anything bad about a brand. But after they got rid of their other car when I was a kid, junked it. Since then, they've only bought Toyota. Only.
Interesting.
Whatever car they buy, it's always a Toyota. Why? Because the people, that's the brand of Toyota, the power of the brand.
Yeah.
The brand basically means whatever we put on the market, our reputation is on the line. And our reputation is unbelievably good, so we're going to put a good product.
Yeah.
So people can like the RAV4, people can like the new one, people can like the old one, people can like a Corolla, people can like a Camry, whatever people like, right? Or an Estima or whatever it is. But if it's Toyota, it's a good car.
Yeah, reliable.
Right? It's reliable.
But
every brand is something different. If you want a fast, flashy, really unbelievable expensive car, you'll buy a Porsche.
Yeah.
What Porsche did, for example, in order to cater to, I guess, the high class working mom, and saying, listen, we don't want to lose that part of the market. So they made an SUV.
Yeah.
Which I thought was come on. That's it's unfair. Because their brand is like, would you buy a Porsche or a Toyota SUV? So then you're like, well, it depends what socioeconomic class you're in. If you're in the socioeconomic class that if you buy a Toyota, you're ostracized by your friends, you have to buy a Porsche.
Yeah.
Right? So the brand then, I'll give you another example of a brand. I know somebody, doesn't matter who it is, I know somebody who said, I will only buy at New World. If my friends saw me buy at Pack and Save, I would be like shamed among my friends.
That's interesting.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, why are you buying a Pack? Like, I buy a Pack and Save, and I'm proud of it. And if somebody shames me for it, like, whatever, they could jump off a cliff, you know? Yeah. I buy a Pack and Save. Sometimes I buy a Countdown. Sometimes I buy a New World if I need stuff. But, but for the most part, Pack and Save is cheaper, so I'll buy it there. Like, I don't care. By the way, Pack and Save and New World are owned by the same company. Countdown is owned by an Australian company, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
So basically, what did the company do? It's a brilliant thing. So the ownership of a company created two brands.
Yeah.
And those two brands, like if you don't, you know that. Some people know that. Most people don't know that New World and Pack and Save
is the same,
are owned by the same company. So what is a brand? A brand is saying, we are creating a personality. We are creating an association. We're creating a community. Meaning they both sell apples.
Yeah.
But you know that the apples at New World are going to be in this really nice kind of pyramid that takes so much time to make and looks so good. You will never find, if you find a rotten apple in New World, they would rather shut down the store than serve a rotten apple. If you find a rotten apple at Pack and Save, it's cheap. So deal with it, and we try not to.
Yeah.
Because it's catering to a different market. There's a different brand. You go into New World, the feel, everything there is basically a derivative of its brand. So that's basically, in a sense, what a brand is. And the question is, so people buy the brand, they don't necessarily buy the product. So that's why brand is incredibly, incredibly important. Now the question is, can companies overvalue their brand or not based on arrogance? So we said today, because we'll go up to like just over 25 minutes.
We'll go. We can have another minute talking about the brand, and we can wrap up this.
So now the other side of it, the flip side of it, is that companies could value their brand, but then what if you go into even the same market, or what if you go into a different market with your brand? What value does your brand actually have? And then what value and what market research does a company have to do, even if their brand is very strong internationally or regionally or in that country?
Yeah. And that's more of what we're going to get into in the next episode.
Right.
And so this has been part one of this new format that we're trialing out, and we're giving a crack.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for maybe watching. Just a picture. But you're watching something.
You are watching something.
And I hope you enjoy.
Maybe it'll be a picture of Moses of the sun coming through. Maybe do a picture of a sun coming through glass.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay. Well, if it's not that picture, then we'll
I'll get my photographer on.
You get your photographer on. So you want to listen to the next episode? Next episode, what we're going to get into are two companies. We're going to get into two food companies. One is Jollibee, which is a Philippines fast food restaurant.
Yeah.
If you want to look that up, there's a CNBC video about Jollibee. It'll be in the description as well. For the next one.
Yeah.
But you can look it up on CNBC. Just do CNBC Jollibee.
Yeah.
It's probably the first video you'll find.
It'll be in the icon.
Yeah. It's Jollibee versus McDonald's in Philippines market. That's what. So we're going to be talking about that, and then we're going to be talking about how Starbucks epically failed in Australia and then how they recovered.
Yeah.
And both of them are opposite examples of a company that values its brand but does market research versus a company that overvalued its brand and lost $100 million.
It's one of your favorite children.
One of my favorite classes to give, absolutely.
This has been Everything Under the Sun. I hope you join us for the next episode soon.